refresher on some of the stuff coming up.
I want to see this.
Yes, so I guess we'll start with the big one. The big part of most people's complaints about aircraft carriers is their spotting mechanics. Basically, if you
Can I just say how sexy Killer Bin sounds? He sounds so good, dude. I love his mic quality.
If the planes happen to fly within your air detection range,
I love his mic quality,
whether
dude.
you like it or not. So, Askance is going to explain a bit about what we're doing to address that main complaint point.
Wouldn't it make sense to maybe go around with why are we doing these changes, especially in the way we are approaching them?
Why? Because we've been asking for fucking years! Anyway. Short answer, that's why. We've been asking for years for this to happen. Anyway, moving on.
Well, the reason that we're making them is because people would like them.
Thank you, Killer Ben.
I mean, there's essentially three main issues that I think we've mentioned in the
Thank you, Killer Ben. We love you.
Just to give you guys a refresher, we're basically looking to address spotting. There's a lot of spotting that aircraft carriers do, and not always intentionally. They just tend to fly around and spot things on their way to do other things. So we want to tone that down quite a bit. We want to make AA defense feel a little bit more impactful. Right now, people oftentimes feel like AA just isn't very satisfying to use.
Anti-air does nothing, man. It does nothing. Where did that meme come from? Because anti-air does nothing.
There's not really a lot going on there in terms of actions that you can take. And we want to reduce the frustration of people getting targeted and focused repeatedly by carriers. So we're going to talk about the changes that we're making specifically to address these points and giving you guys an idea of what our thought process is. So I guess I'll just start us off right away with the altitude system that you may have read about and how that works to reduce spotting. Essentially, planes will be traveling at a high altitude stage. We're going to be removing the boost system so that planes will always just travel at max speed at high altitude, and they won't be able to spot ships for themselves while they're traveling around the map.
Just to say this, Uniball, just to comment on what you're saying, they never admitted that CVs were OP until they only openly admitted that CVs are broken 6 months ago when they first talked about this thing. They never openly admitted that CVs were broken. They never said that along any lines. Never, ever, ever admitted that CVs were broken. Never. This is the only time that they've ever actually admitted that CVs are broken. Which means the whole time they know it is, it's just they never said it. Anyway, moving on. Let's just keep listening.
So this will reduce that kind of incidental spotting where ships are just getting lit while CVs are on their way around the map. And key to note that while planes are at high altitude, they will not be targeted by AA, although they will still be able to be shot at by fighters.
Okay, so to go off the spotting gimmick, all right, just to go off of the spotting gimmick here, it's not the fact that that they are moving to where they're going that is spotting that is the problem, right? That's not the problem. It's the fucking fighters. We can all here say that most CVs only use their fighters to spot. And that's literally it. They'll fly in the middle, place their fighter right in the middle, and then they go somewhere else and their fighter spots the whole time. They don't like magically spot things while they're like when they're flying to a destination, they're not trying to spot something, they're just flying along. That isn't what gets you killed. What gets you killed is the fighter spotting. Or when they just hover above you, just jerking themselves off. That's literally, that's when you get killed. It's not them flying to the destination. It's them placing a fighter, or if they're just hovering above you. There's no middle ground. It's either one or the other. Thank you for the 9-month prod there, Zphone. I appreciate it. Askance plays the game. Okay, so Killer Bin plays the game, Askance plays the game, and so does Gaishu. I know nothing about Al Fruccini. Killer Bin I can vouch for, Askance I can vouch for, and I'm sorry I'm saying his name wrong. I'm not trying to be mean. I literally just have an issue saying his name. He plays the game, and so does Gaishu. Gaishu was the leader of a Hurricane clan, so he's one of the most competent community member. He's like one of the top community managers of skill. He ran a clan, I forgot the name of it, they changed all the time. And these guys aren't developers, they're community managers, right? You have to remember this. These guys are community managers, they are being told what to say from the developers. So, these guys do play the game, and they try to take the advice that us CCs tell them, right? They try to help us, and we try to help them. but there's only so much that these guys can do, right? So that's why we try not to get mad at them, though. We try not to get mad. We just get mad at the developers, but moving on.
So Ensconce can explain a little bit more about this for you guys.
Yeah, just to kind of like spell out the scene, so to speak.
And yes,
Right
Askance
now
is
on
a
live
CV
server,
main.
you know, if you're in a CV and you're going to do something, maybe work on a battleship that your team is firing at. So you're trying to capitalize. You know, you're being a good team player. You're focusing your fire. You're going to lift off from the deck. You're going to start zooming off towards your target, and along the way, you might end up tripping across a sub that you didn't even know was there, or maybe a destroyer that had pushed up that you didn't know was there. A cruiser could be spotted because its AA is lighting you up, or perhaps because it's firing from behind an island where it's technically hidden, or maybe behind a smoke screen, but because it's shooting, its area detection is flared out. As a CV player, you get all of this information, even though that's not necessarily what you were looking for. You were just looking to attack the target that your team is working on. And honestly, that just very quickly turns into battle influence because you're giving your team so much information that affects their decision making, that affects how they play the game, and the CV becomes really important as a result of that. So we've heard a lot about how spotting can just feel like it's too much. So high altitude, the way this is going to work, planes will take off, they'll climb up to high altitude. You're not going to spot surface assets, but to the benefit of the CV, you are going to be flying at maximum speed. You're going to be flying faster. You're not going to be interacting with AA, so you don't necessarily have to duck and dive and take the circuitous routes to get to your target. You can go to the target to have that interaction, but you're not going to be providing information. And honestly, it kind of works for both ways. It gives a little more of a breather for the enemy teams so they can set up and do their thing.
Yep. And of course, the flip side of this is how do you actually make attacks? You'll transition to low altitude when you press the left mouse button, as you do right now to enter attack mode. There'll be a descent phase where planes will basically take a while to actually go down from high altitude and enter that attack phase. And when you do enter the attack phase, you will be able to spot ships and your planes will travel a little bit slower, as well as get targeted by AA, of course. So this is essentially what CVs play like right now. It'll be like, well, you're making the attack. And a key change here is that when you enter an attack mode, it will only include the planes in the attack group. So let's say you have a 12-plane midway squad, only the 3 planes actually making the attack will descend, and when one of those gets shot down, it won't get replenished by other planes in the squad.
Okay. Anyone that knows anything about CV gameplay knows that that is massive. Right? Anyone that plays CVs knows this is massive, right? For regular CVs, this is massive. Same time, like, yeah, I understand it being needlessly complicated, but the fact that only one attack squad drops at a time, it makes it where if it's a lower health, you can deny strikes. Yes, you can deny a CV strike a lot easier. The thing is, though, this isn't going to affect the Russian CVs that much, right? You know what I mean? The Russian CVs aren't going to get affected by this, right? Because their whole squad is their one attack. So this, you're not going to be able to deny a Russian strike. But other CVs, you can. But the Russian ones, you're not going to really be able to. Yeah. Russian CVs legit break most... It breaks most of the known rules of CVs. It breaks most of the rules. That's why people hate fighting against the Russian CVs, the Soviet ones, because they break most of the rules that other CVs follow. Which is why fighters really don't, like, fighters don't affect them, or they take so little damage, yeah. A player from my last clan quit WoWs because he was a CV main because of this change. Holy shit, dude. No way. The CV mains are coping. Holy shit, dude. Oh, imagine making CVs slightly more difficult and you can't just drop anyone. They're making it more skill and they literally rage quit the game, bro. That person deserves to get shamed, dude. Like, I'm not trying to be mean, bro, but holy shit, bro. What a... Askance doesn't look like he's want to cry. He's just tired, man. He's like me, bro. He's been sick, dude. He's been sick a
So that means
lot.
that
Whenever
AA
I
will
talk to
actually
him.
directly reduce the damage that you take from a CV by shooting down planes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've
a
actually
lot
got,
of people are giving up the game, not
we've got
just
a few changes in
CVs.
store that are trying to work directly with AA to make it feel more impactful. But one of the issues right now on live server is that if a CV is flying out with 9 planes and they're attacking with 3, well, that's cool. But your AA is actually killing the 9th plane, and then the 8th plane, and then the 7th plane, meaning those first 3, it's really easy for them to get through. So with this change, the 3 planes will be coming down to make that attack, while the other 6 are going to stay up at high altitude. So because high altitude, you can't shoot it with AA, that AA is going to be directed to those 3 incoming planes. So currently on live server, a strong ship with good AA can probably take down 1, maybe 2 planes by itself. And if you've got
Thanks for the raid there, Newsroom. I appreciate it. Thank you. How was your stream today, brother? We're currently listening to the World of Warships stream today when they talked about it all. No. No, some ships just have higher population than others. But thanks for the raid, dude. I appreciate it. We had a good stream today. If you guys are ready, please give Newsroom a follow. Would greatly appreciate it. But I'm listening to this.
able to help you out, or maybe use a consumable, or have a little assistance from another means, that could actually be enough to take out all 3 planes in that instance, meaning the CV strike is just stopped.
And thank you, Jack. I appreciate it, dude.
Being the one chance to prevent a strike coming through, you can really rely on the AA that you have and having that interaction, which we honestly hope is going to make for a better situation. It is worth noting that at the lower altitude, when making that strike, the CV will be able to see the targets that it's coming in on. And we have a mechanic that we need to talk to about that, but that's going to be a little later.
All right. And kind of the last piece of the altitude system here is going to be something new that I think we haven't talked about yet, which is called Recon mode. Because of that descent phase where you're going from high altitude to low altitude when you're making an attack, CVs need a lot of space, a lot of lead up time in order to actually make attacks now in this current iteration. So this is kind of aimed at alleviating that. When you're in high altitude, you can press Q to enter recon mode and go down to low altitude, where you will be able to spot ships and be targeted by AA and fighters as per usual. But this will be a very limited duration, and it will consume a set amount of that time per activation, so that you can't just dolphin, so to speak, between high and low altitude to spot things. So
Yeah.
maybe Wisconsin give us a little bit more info.
So it's worth remembering CVs for the past several years have been used as a reconnaissance class.
I'm waiting to hear more about this before I comment on it. I don't want to make it. I want to hear a little bit more about this mechanic, because I know what it is. I just want to make sure I understand before I say something.
In our game, and pilots have eyes, so we got to give it to them. There's still the ability for a CV
No
to
fucking
provide
shit they have
information to their
eyes.
team, get some reconnaissance, maybe look at some positions and such. That being said, there are tools we'll talk about, or maybe you can blind those pilots for a time and keep them off of your ship as well as your shipmates. But the big thing is having an ability to kind of dive below, take a look around, and get some information is much different than the constant spotting that CVs can provide on live server. So I just want to take a moment to remind everybody, you can sign up for the test until tomorrow. So please, please, please register for the test. Get other people you know to register for the test so you can hop on here, because we need all the feedback that you can give us. Recon mode, for instance, maybe you want it to be a little longer, maybe you want it to be a little less. We're going to need the feedback from you so that we can give that to our designers.
Yes, and we can answer 2 points that have been raised, is that what will happen with carrier fighters? They will be vulnerable to AA, so you can shoot them down. And the other one was, I need to go back up and check it because I've already lost it because the chat is moving too quickly.
While Bin is finding the questions, there was a question or more or less input from Dead Horse 1. A question. At World of Warships, with Ashkans and Gaishu being CV mains, did they have any input at Wargaming on these CV changes?
Okay, so something that they brought up was the fighters. Fighters seem like they aren't being changed. That is the biggest thing. What I want to hear from them is that fighters no longer spot. That is what I want to hear. I don't care about the CV spotting or not when it's flying around. What I care about is that damn freaking fighter, dude. That fighter is what is the annoyance of most of CV plays. It's not them like flying to their destination. It's that fighter that they place where they sit it there and then it spots for a minute when they're off doing wherever else across the map. That's what most people hate. That's what I want to hear. In this whole thing, if I hear them saying fighters no longer spot, I'll be happy. That'll be what I'll be happy about.
I've been accused of being a CV main. It's true. I've played a lot of CVs, and so has Wisconsin.
You've been burned with the brand.
Yeah, I mean the whole community team has a.
Gaishu is literally one of the best CV players. He was literally one of the best. So
changes, we are involved in various processes in the company.
Same. I would also love to see no more double CVs.
Carrier fighters will be vulnerable to the AA in this new system.
Yep.
I don't care about that. Can they spot?
Yes.
That they will.
Whoever was in the comment section during this, you need to ask the right questions. You need to be asking, does the fighters actually spot? Whoever was watching this stream, you failed me. You didn't ask the right question. Whoever was there, you failed. You didn't ask the right question.
I think the dev team is looking at reworking fighters a little bit more comprehensively, but for this test, they'll be pretty similar to the current iteration.
Okay, so he did say that they're looking into messing with fighters more. Okay, so they are looking into them. So that's good at least. Thank you, Gaishu. Appreciate you, Gaishu.
Yes,
I think there'll probably be more changes later.
There will be an article that'll be coming out that'll have information, and I do believe that's highlighted in it.
Thank you, Gaishu, for explaining that.
Right.
There was also the mention again. So there was also the mention of the thing with the why are we not doing only minimap spotting? So guys, we don't want to just put a band-aid on and be like, oh, we're changing into minimap spotting only, and this will remove all of the problems. No, with this rework, we are trying to adjust, and we're now
how? Okay, so I'm gonna be really harsh on this. If 99.999% of the community agrees we would be happy with minimap spotting, how is that band-aiding the issue? I don't care if the CV can spot. I don't care. They can spot. Just make it minimap only. And that would solve all of this headache that this whole test is. Right? That would solve 90% of it right there, right? Most everyone here is agreeing that this is so overly complicated for no reason. Most of the players in the game would have been happy with them just making it where CVs only get minimap spotting, right? The main issue of CVs for people that complain about CVs is mostly their spotting, right? Because when they're spotting you, you have to choose between either being taking the hit from the CV or taking the hit from the player. If they make it where the CV doesn't spot and it's only minimap spotting, that means that the ship has a better chance of then dodging the CV. Now, that also means that if the player is being too aggressive and he's being spotted by a surface ship, that means that is his fault and not the CV spotting that's causing that issue. You know what I mean? Right? So it then makes it where instead of just a CV spotting you from really far back, and then you trying to dodge being dev struck by a battleship or whatever, being shot up by a player ship, you could just focus on the CV. But if you're playing bad and you're being overly aggressive and you're being spotted by surface ships and then you're being attacked by the CV, it's not the CV spotting that's getting you, it's then the surface ship spotting, which is how most of us be like, oh, well, he's playing aggressive. That's his problem, right? It's not the CV's fault that he's playing super aggressive and he dies, right? You know what I mean? So most people will be like, that's why most people are like, we would rather them just have it as minimap spotting for that simple reason. Will Anti-Air have Fire Bloom, which allows, I don't know, man. They haven't talked about that shit yet. I'm just listening to this and I'm making comments as we're going along. This is like there's still 40 minutes left, dude. This is like a long period. So I'm just commenting as we're going along. Like I'm like pausing at certain points, just talking about stuff. So that's all I'm doing at this
Getting
point.
to this, as Gaishu and Ashkens will go to now, is it's not only the spotting that we're trying to fix, we're also trying to get to the main cause of problem is the interaction between surface ships and aircraft carriers, aka the anti-aircraft firepower of a surface ship. And for example, a certain consumable that with the last big CV rework was a bit more a joke consumable, I would almost say, or at least a meme consumable within the community. Of course, that's defensive AA fire. But please, you two continue on.
Yeah, I want to take the mini-map spotting just to talk about it a little bit. So at the start of this, we mentioned we really have 3 objectives. One, we're trying to deal with spotting because spotting has been one of the biggest pointed issues, I guess, or points of frustration over the past several years, really. And we've tried several different tests looking at ways to deal with this, and we feel pretty good about what we're trying right now. But there are also AA issues. There are also the feeling of being targeted, where the CV might go after the same ship over and over and over again. Minimap spotting may actually be able to help with teammates having interactions when the CVs are able to spot something, but it doesn't stop those CV ship interactions. It doesn't change AA. It doesn't change the feeling of a CV coming after you. And the changes that we're testing are much more inclusive. We're trying to deal with a lot of different points at the same time.
Like Fructini mentioned, there's basically 3 main issues of the spotting. There's the A, defense feeling impactful, and there's being focused by a CV. Minimap spotting, it basically doesn't really help the person getting focused by the CV at all, and it still gives the enemy team a lot of information about team deployment. So at this stage, it's not really something that we're interested in. We're looking for the comprehensive rework. But before we move on to A changes, we actually have something that you may have read about before that's pretty exciting that we want to talk a little.
I understand where they're coming from with this, but if a CV decides to focus you only, like, there's literally nothing you can do about that. No matter what they do here, if a CV wants your ass, you're dead. I don't know what they can do to actually do that. I don't know what they can do to actually fix that. Like they talked about the making it where they only do an attack squad going out at a time. Like I could see that affecting it somehow, but no matter what, if a CV wants you dead, you're dead, right? They will keep coming after your ass the whole match, right? So the only way for them to really fix that is if they drastically increase the impact of anti-air, right? That's like the only thing I can think of. They would have to drastically increase it. They've already said something along the lines of it, the longer that the CV's in the anti-air, the more damage it does, but that's not going to affect lower anti-air ships where their anti-air is absolute garbage. It would have to be such a high percentage rate that it would actually do something. Because then they can't sell new CV premiums. Yeah, exactly. There you go. All right, moving on.
About which is manual secondaries for CVs, which will allow CVs to actually manually control their secondary batteries and shoot at enemy ships. So again, because of attack mode now being a kind of longer lead up time, a longer prep time, you need a little bit more distance. It can be pretty hard for CVs to interact with ships at close range, especially. So manual secondaries will allow CVs to do that, and also actually tie them more into the gameplay of other ships, where they can actually look at something and shoot at it. So this is pretty exciting. We know manual secondaries are something that people have asked about for a variety of ships that we're pretty excited to start implementing, and it seems like the right time to start playing around with it. So give us your feedback on it. Let us know what you think. And Fructini and Ben, are there any?
I honestly think that them having manual secondaries for CVs is actually a good thing. Like I actually like that because that could then turn into other ships having manual secondaries. If it works out for CVs, it could potentially work for like battleships that build into secondaries, right? If they're testing it on CVs and it works, that it could potentially work for battleships and cruisers, right? So I hope that the manual secondaries work for the CVs, because if it does, then they may add it to battleships potentially and cruisers. Yeah, exactly. Right? So some people may not like CVs getting a secondary buff like this, right, with the manuals, but see it this way. If it works for the CVs, they may do it for the battleships and cruisers, potentially, right? Yeah, that's how I see it with it there, Moungulet. That's how I see it, dude. You build an anti, if you don't build an anti, you get owned by a CV, then you build it into anti, you don't see a CV. That's literally what happens all the time, dude. It's super aggravating. So yeah, I feel you there. Okay, moving on, let's keep going.
These ships that you might be excited about using manual secondaries on for CVs?
Grab Zeppelin.
Hakuryu.
Grab
yes.
So
Zeppelin.
this 10
Grab
centimeter
grab Zeppelin.
Akisugi turrets on it.
I need
Grab
to push the
Zeppelin.
team to add formidable.
Ooh,
I want to
That's a
pick a
good
fight
one.
with Italian cruisers.
yeah. And you know, there may be
Yeah.
some other carriers with heavy armor that might be interesting to
Grab
focus on.
Zeppelin.
The Manfred von
Richthofen.
Richthofen. It's a converted battleship.
I mean, someone, Painter put another month to it yet. Again, I think as someone else mentioned it.
It was mentioned.
in chat. Of course, it was mentioned. There is, of course, a very specific aircraft carrier conversion that the Japanese did based on the third in the class of course, the Yamatos. Of the name that shall not be named on stream. Otherwise, the prolonged release date is being added with another month. But then again, there was other great mentions in the chat from the community with Graf Zeppelin, Kaga, and a personal favorite for me, and it was just mentioned by Uniball, the 8-inch gun Lexington. That would be great to have as well. So
that would be a fun premium.
I can only hope.
I want to take just a moment to
Give me
dial in on
Saratoga.
why manual secondaries, because yeah, it's cool. Like, I mean, there have been people that have been asking for this on battleships for years, for instance. But why are we adding this as part of the test? Well, one, it's cool. So if you want to hop on, get under the test, get your feedback. I mean, let us know how absolutely much you love it, and maybe we can see how we can deal with it in other areas of the game. But specifically, I mentioned before, during those attack runs, if the CV's coming in and the enemies that they're trying to attack, the AA is just too thick, they might not be able to actually attack enemies, and that could be pretty rough. So having the ability to fall back to having guns, which will be a little more accurate, a little longer range while you're using those secondaries, allows you to still be able to contribute. And even more toward the end of the game, where the CV is usually off somewhere on the edge of the border, it really gives them the ability to get into the match, start swinging, throw around some gunplay. And I mean,
If this means that CVs are getting manual settings, does this mean that they're also going to be changing the DCP timer for CVs potentially? That would be massive. I think DCP timer for CVs has been way too long for way too long. Like, the fact that they have a DCP timer of like 60 seconds and it's automatic, I think it needs to be changed. If they're going to be making like manual secondaries, I feel like it should be changed to where you can pop the DCP yourself, something like that. I like it being automatic in 60 seconds is like ridiculous. I don't know. Just a thought.
destroyers coming at them and trying to get up close and personal, they can try to hammer them down too, which is fun.
So to add to this, to explain a bit more, as I see questions with, don't secondaries provide less earnings for damage? When you're in manual control of the aircraft itself, of the hull, the secondaries turn into main guns, so they are not counted as secondaries then anymore. They're only used as secondaries while you control the airplanes. So while you're not in direct control of the hull, of the ship itself, they turn into automated secondaries. If you're back, you just use them like a regular main guns.
So yeah, exactly. So if you're flying your planes, the carrier acts as normal, as it does now. When you're controlling the carrier itself, you will then have control of your guns.
Yes, they will act as main guns.
Yeah.
I think I've seen another interesting question there, which of course was answered a bit as well. Will there be a free captain reskill with these changes? Potentially, but it's too early to say anything. We're going into a kind of closed but open test in a
100% when this goes live, there's going to be a skill reset. Anytime there's ever been a big thing like this, there's always a skill reset. They just can't say openly if there will be, but there's going to be.
But on a separate server. So I post the link again. Please sign up. There will be more info on this, what we're talking about as well in a few days, with another article displaying everything in detail with nice images, I think some animations, and of course all the information we're talking today about.
Yes.
As far as I remember, and what wanted to say? Yeah, exactly. And as soon as these, please participate, provide us feedback, so we know if it's heading into the correct direction or not. And then once it goes into a clearer direction, we can then talk about potential compensations, changes, or for example, free captain respecs in case something major changes there as well.
And for the question regarding hybrid aircraft, we don't currently have any specific details about how they will be changed, given the priority right now is carriers as a class and how they work. Though that isn't to say that they might bleed into a change to hybrids if it is deemed necessary. But right now,
hybrids
the
are
priority
definitely something that we'll take
Yes.
a look at as we dial in on the CV changes.
They are on the list. Right, so shall we get back to the meme consumable, the one that we all?
Oh, we certainly can.
What are we doing to? Because right now, I think we all agree that if you pop Def AA, you're like, oh, I think it's doing something. I don't, and so on, unless you're in Atlanta where it's still unlimited. Like, but
So
we're changing that, and how are we changing that, Gaishu?
Yeah, going back to the point that we want to solve, which is A, defense often doesn't feel very impactful to use, and depending on your ship, you may not have very much A at all, so it doesn't really matter whether you have defensive fire to buff your continuous damage or not, because there's not much there to start with. So a bunch of these changes are focused on making it more impactful to be doing something with your A, regardless of how strong your base A is. The first thing we're changing is actually priority sector, which we're going to rebrand to call it manual A. It's not going to be a sector anymore, it's going to affect all 360 degrees around your ship, and it's only going to be a % damage burst without the continuous damage buff component. So we'll be talking about more changes to this later. It's kind of tied to another mechanic as well, but moving on to defensive fire, like you mentioned, we're going to add a few different effects to this consumable. First off, it's going to actually buff your A range to 7 kilometers.
I need to re-listen that.
So a bunch of these changes are focused on making it more impactful to be doing something with your A, regardless of how strong your base A is. The first thing we're changing is actually priority sector, which we're going to rebrand to call it manual A. It's not going to be a sector anymore. It's going to affect all 360 degrees around your ship, and it's only going to be a % damage burst without the continuous damage buff component. So we'll be talking about more changes to this.
So instead of it being where you have to prioritize a sector, you just click a button and you automatically do a % damage to the aircraft. That takes all skill out of the priority sector and keeping your ship turned. So that skill is now just a push button automatic damage feature. Okay, that's fine. If they want to dumb down this, if they want to dumb that down, that's perfectly fine with me. If they want to dumb it down, sure, I guess. It's all it does is just make it. It just makes it way easier, right? So just dumbs down the skill, right? So nothing much to complain there.
The mechanic as well, but moving on to defensive fire, like you mentioned, we're going to add a few different effects to this consumable. First off, it's going to actually buff your A range to 7 kilometers for your long range A, regardless of your base range. So this will help out a lot of ships that have a shorter base range to begin with.
They should have done this years ago. I'm glad they're doing it, but they should have done this years ago. At least Trump's anti-air will actually be decent now. Trump's anti-air range is 3.5. And it actually has nice anti-air, so the fact it's going to get buffed to 7 with that consumable buff is really good. So I'm very happy with that. So moving on.
May not be able to use their A all the time. And then there's also a very key new mechanic for defensive fire where it will actually blind plane spotting when planes enter the AA range while your defensive fire is active. So you'll want to pop defensive fire proactively. You want to pop it before planes are actually in AA range. When they cross that AA threshold, they will be blinded, assuming that you're not spotted by a surface ship. You will be able to go dark. So this gives a lot of utility to ships like...
I have to listen to this one more time.
ships that have a shorter base range to begin with, that may not be able to use their AA all the time. And then there's also a very key new mechanic for defensive fire where it will actually blind plane spotting when planes enter the AA range while your defensive fire is active. So you'll want to pop defensive fire proactively. You want to pop it before planes are actually in AA range. When they cross that AA threshold, they will be blinded, assuming that you're not spotted by a surface ship. You will be able to go dark. So this gives a lot of utility to ships like, one of my favorite examples is Elbing, which does not have fantastic AA, but still has a defensive fire consumable. Will now be able to actually blind planes with its AA and kind of get an effect out of the consumable that way, and even maybe protect teammates from being spotted.
Yeah, so if give me just a second on this one. So we talked about just now manual AA and then also defensive fire. And it's really important that we look at how those can interact with each other, because as Gaishu said, some ships, the AA could be stronger. They just didn't have enough mounts on them, especially maybe in the middle tier. So using defensive AA is going to increase out your range to 7 kilometers, which is quite a bit in terms of covering yourself and also covering allies. And then
Thanks for
manual
watching a channel that I am banned from for making fun of the Moslever's special operations. Smile.
I'm not watching the channel, I'm watching their VOD. But thank you for the bits.
AA, as long as you're activating it while those planes are in range, it doesn't matter if they're close, it doesn't matter if they're far, you're going to be dealing the full damage of manual AA. It's a percentage amount of health that it's going to be chunking off the planes. So you're not only able to effectively add damage, even if your AA suite is not necessarily the greatest, you're going to be able to help yourself, you're going to be able to help teammates, and that's pretty massive. And the blind, that's 7 clicks of range, means that if a cruiser has a destroyer that's 5 clicks ahead of it and you see those midway bombs coming in, maybe they don't know exactly where the DD is, but they have an idea and they're coming in to strike them. If you pop your defensive AA, get it ready before those planes come in, when they end up going after the DD, they get close enough, your AA turns on, that's blinded. They're not going to be able to see them. And that's not mini-map spotting where they kind of see the silhouette on the water. They just don't see it. Their teammates don't see it. They don't see it. It's a blind drop at the best of times. And if they end up triggering a fighter to try to see it anyway, that fighter is going to come into DFA and get blinded as well. So you have the ability to protect yourself if you're trying to move from cover to cover. You have the ability to protect yourself if you're trying to back up. Maybe you want to get a heal or reposition. You have the ability to protect your teammates. There's a whole lot of flexibility that defensive AA is going to be able to provide with these changes.
Yep, and again, like Ensconce mentioned, it will blind fighters as well. It's not just limited to player-controlled planes. It will blind any planes that are in range as long as they're entering the A range while your DF is active. And there's one last component to defensive fire, which it will help you charge a new mechanic that is called...
Not gonna lie, dude. I don't think that blind mechanic is gonna stay. I don't think that blind mechanic is gonna stay. With all these changes that they're doing, I don't think it's gonna stay, dude. And Juby, congratulations, and say something in chat, please. I don't think so, dude. The problem, okay, so I'm all for them making it where it's harder for a CV to strike, right? I'm all for it. I'm all for them making it where CVs can't spot and stuff. But the fact that there's now there will be a mechanic, like, I'm not defending CVs, I'm just saying this like outright. You gotta think it from like a game perspective, right? If they're gonna have a mechanic where you can just instantly make it where the CV can't see anything at all, like, what's a CV supposed to do at that point, right? Like, you can't do anything at all as a CV, right? Nothing. Can't do anything. And the thing is that I don't know if they said it, but as far as I'm aware, you have to activate the DFA before they enter in. So if they are coming at you, you could then pop the DFA and they fly into it, then it activates. Now, I am all for this for fighters. I feel like if they have a fighter, it does pretty well. But I honestly don't think that blind feature is going to be permanent. And if it is going to be a thing, it's not going to last very long. It can't. Like, the fact they say it's going to last a whole DFAA, that's 30 seconds, bro. That's 30 seconds, man. So let's just talk overall about what they're doing, right? And then I'm trying to explain why I don't think this blind feature is going to be a thing, right? You have to think about it this way, right? Okay. So I'm trying to explain why I don't think this is going to be a thing, right? So first off, they made it where the planes are in high altitude only. And when you go into recon mode or attack mode, it brings out one attack squadron at a time. Only one, right? So only one. Which means that if they bring out their squad down, it gets blinded, right? That one. Only that one, right? Which means that, technically speaking, a CV could exploit it, where they get the guy to pop the DFA and then they quickly go back up. And even if they lose that one, they still have like 3 or 2 other attack squadrons ready, right? It will save them, like I'm trying to think of ways where CVs can get around this. So like, I don't think it's just absolutely like dumb. Or I don't think it's overpowered. Like, I'm trying to think here. Okay, so thinking about this, there are ways for CVs to get around this. So I think that they'll keep it. The reason why I think they'll keep it is the fact that CVs can get around it. The reason why is that pretty much if a CV goes down to recon, or if they do an attack or they're doing an attack, and then it's like, oh, well, they activate DFAA. Well, that one attack doesn't go off. And then they pull it back up. And then they wait for the DFAA to be done. Then they'll go back down and do an attack run, right? And that's literally how they do it, right? So for me, I don't think that the blind would be removed. Like, I know my initial thought was like, there's no way it's gonna stay in the game. But with the DFAA buff, 7 kilometers is great. Super happy with that. The blind is a little bit iffy on if I feel like it'll actually go out of testing. Like, it would depend. It would mean that CVs have to spend more time attacking particular targets. If they want to go after a particular target, they would have to spend a lot more time on it. Or ships that don't have DFAA are going to get way more targeted. Like, way more. Any ship that doesn't have DFAA, you're going to get so religiously targeted. So most of the Japanese ships, they're just toast. They're going to get focused way more now. And CVs are going to like, because all they have to do is hold tab, look at what ships are in, say, oh, this ship has DFA, this one does, this one, and they'll just ignore them and go right to the people that don't have it, right? So yes, this does make it where DFAA is good again, but it also makes it where every other class that has terrible anti-air just absolutely messed with. Right? And I'm talking about DFAA, okay? Now, the thing is, we have to think about it this way, right? We can't just be negative about the whole thing, right? I think it this way. They are making it where if you shoot down the attack squad, they do not get replenished, right? So, like, how the normal CV works now is if a CV has a full squad of planes, you shoot down one of them while attack run's going on, it just gets replenished from the main squad above, right? It just keeps replenishing it over and over and over again, okay? In this new iteration that they're testing, when they do the attack run, whatever is in that attack run does not get replenished by the high altitude planes that are sitting above, right? So they have a full squadron. When the main one's up here, the one comes down. These up here do not replenish these when they are being shot down, right? So it makes it where if whoever the CV player is doesn't know what they're doing and they lose all their planes, it's like, oh well, they can't do an attack run. They have to redo another one from the main group that's up here, right? They are also making it where the priority sector is way stronger, right? It's way stronger. So instead of it just being like, I was trying to understand it earlier. So instead of it just being a continuous damage buff, it does a percentage damage over time. So when you have that manual anti-air on, it does a percentage damage. Instead of it being like a continuous damage buff, it makes it where you're doing raw percentage damage to CVs, which you like, that's massive. And the fact that this is like the new priority sector or manual anti-air is a thing where it's across 360 of the ship. All you have to do is something enters your anti-air, just pop it. That's all you have to do, just pop it. Pop it, and you have that active. So a plane in there, you do extra percentage damage to it. It's no longer just like you're doing like a certain amount of damage. It's a percentage damage of the plane's health. Now, this is going to be great against stuff like an FDR or a like a Malta, things with way tankier planes. But against something like a Nakamov, that's not going to really affect it that much. And the thing is that there are ways to get around this. Where guys were talking about earlier how they're trying to make it where dolphining isn't going to be a thing. Pretty much the problem with the prior sector is that right now it's a 15-second action time, a 15-second cooldown, right? So if a CV goes down to attack, you pop this. If they have it where they can just quickly go back up, they can then wait that time and then go back down and hit you and then go right back up before the attack, before they can get another like priority sector or manual secondary on, right? They can get you to pop it, waste it, go back down, repeat, rinse, repeat over and over and over again, right? And this is where the mechanic that they're about to talk about, which we're going to go on, they're talking about where the longer that you're in their anti-air, the longer they're in your anti-air, the more damage you do.
Automatic A now, I think the name got changed. This thing is essentially addressing the pain point of being focused by a CV repeatedly. It's going to help you out. It will charge while your A is active, kind of similar to combat instructions, and it will activate automatically when it is charged. And also key to note, the progress will never decay. So when you're getting attacked by a CV, you're charging this thing up. When it pops, it will last for a very...
I don't like the fact it's automatic. It should be a manual thing. Because if it's automatic, that means a CV player can exploit it. Which means that he's able to pop out of it when it's activated and pop back down when it's done. It needs to be a manual mechanic where you can activate it when you want to.
Very long time, and it will buff 3 aspects of your anti-air. It'll buff the damage. It's going to boost your manual A percentage damage. Again, that's the rebranded priority sector. And it will also reduce the manual A cooldown. So again, even if your A isn't very strong by default, this will give you a buff to that manual A and let you be doing that percentage damage more often and more strongly. So this will help out a lot, I feel, with that focus fire element. And again, the defensive fire will...
It needs to be manual. It needs to be manual. It needs to be manual. They didn't talk about DFA being able to shoot planes that are at the highest altitude RAS. They didn't talk about that in this video, which I'm concerned with. Because they talked about DFA a lot, but they didn't talk about can DFA shoot at high altitude planes. They said in the previous devlog it could, but they haven't said if it does here.
Will automatically boost this up to a certain percentage as well. So you
Yeah.
can kind of get a head start on charging it.
It actually, so what this means is, if you think about kind of the scenario on this, let's say you're in a Holland, you've got defensive fire, maybe you're in a ranked match, say, and obviously you're in the front, you're in a DD. Planes are coming, they want to scout your flank, they want to see what you got going on. You can turn on your defensive fire, which one is going to blind any planes that try to dip into recon mode or make an attack, try to see anything that's going on early. So you can keep your deployment a secret. And at the same time, just by activating it, you're going to increase that passive gain to 50%. So you're going to start yourself off halfway there to being able to have increased AA damage, have a faster firing manual AA that is even stronger. So the ability, again, to widen out your AA to protect yourself, to protect your teammates, the whole intent of this system is...
They don't talk about it, so I don't think it's going to be a thing. I don't think it's going to be a thing. So instead of making it where DFA can attack a high altitude planes, they have removed that from what they were talking about. Which means that when planes are at high altitude, they cannot be shot down by anything. At all. Nothing. They can't be shot down, they can't be doing anything. So they're pretty much free at that high altitude. The only time they take anti-air damage is when they are in recon mode or if they're doing an attack. So it's almost like subs, but air. It's literally like subs, where you can't do anything about them. Like, you can see the planes, but you can't do anything about them until they drop. When they're up at that point, they can spot. What is the point of fighters? Can they attack high altitude planes? Yes. Fighters can attack high altitude planes.
Is that if a CV is just going after the same ship over and over and over, or maybe you proactively are trying to be in the way of the CV and you're kind of blocking them over and over and over, you're going to charge up that AA and you're going to actually make it more impactful. So it kind of gives you a little gameplay on how you can interact with that.
How can you block it if they're at high altitude? You didn't say anything about that. How can you block a CV if he's at high altitude unless that's something? You haven't mentioned that at all. If the DFA goes to 7 kilometers and can attack things that are high altitude, then that's perfectly fine. But they haven't mentioned that once here at all. And they've been very thorough in what they've been explaining. So I don't think it's going to be a thing in this test. It'll probably be something maybe they'll think about, but in this test, no.
That, and well, frankly, if the CV is just going after you, it's going to make it hurt. You're going to make them pay for it.
And why the hell would a CV go after a Holland to begin with? That CV is absolutely stupid if it does that. No CV goes after a Holland. No CV. No CV in their right mind goes after a Holland.
Yep. So, what do our EU friends think about all these changes?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess this is a very selfish comment, but obviously every time we play this game with our WG tag, the carrier always seems to find us. So, and it definitely will help for ships that are sort of like weaker than average AA, where you do feel...
They said that in a previous dev blog, Merlin, but they didn't say it here. This is not the same. What they're talking about is different than what the previous dev blog they said months ago. This is different. They have done different things. The previous dev blog says it does, but this one's different. So we have to wait for the dev blog to come out on Saturday for them to be able to see it, right? Yes. If there's something they missed that's not in this video, it'll be talked about in the dev blog on Saturday. So I'll be reading that dev blog on Saturday because I want to see if that's like the one thing I'm looking at.
Well, like an ant against a person. And so I think the improvements will definitely help with that. And the significant
you're right,
changes that we're
Merlin.
working on should hopefully bring about a better interaction dynamic between all the classes.
There's never going to be a good interaction mechanic among the classes. There's never going to be. CVs and subs are the most hated classes in the game because they're still treated differently than the rest of the classes. They don't detonate. Detonate's the biggest thing. So CVs have a special DCP timer, 60 seconds. It's automatic. CVs are still treated differently than the rest. When you treat the classes differently from the surface, of course people are going to hate them. So, yeah. If they want people to actually be not hating on these classes so much, they need to treat them like the rest. They need to all be equal. The fact that they're not is why people hate on them so much. So. If planes can't see without seeing going into recon and DFA can hit at a high altitude, that means planes can be wiped again without warning. That isn't going to happen, dude. I'm telling you, there's no way that they're going to have that, Merlin. They didn't mention it here, so I almost guarantee the DFA is not going to attack high altitude. Because if it could, they would have mentioned it here. They didn't mention it here. Askance would have 1,000%, 1,000% would have mentioned it. It would attack high altitude. He would have 1,000%, dude. I know him. He would have mentioned it. He's super detailed in that stuff. He would have mentioned it if it could attack it. They had no mention of planes taking damage in high altitude. They've only said that at high altitude they take no anti-air damage. They've never said any instance of where it does. And that's something, if they're doing a wargaming stream, they're blocking the spotting and the attack. Okay, so a few months ago, there was a dev blog that talked about I even did a video on it about the CV changes, where they were talking about all the features, and they were making it where, with DFAA, they made it where they also talked about the skill of being able to blind things. They didn't attach it to DFAA. Back then in that dev blog. In this, they're attaching the blinding with DFAA, which means that they attach the blinding to the DFAA, and they're making it where high altitude they can't be attacked at all. Because if they made it where, okay, we have to think of this of a balancing standpoint, right? If they made it where you could activate DFAA, they can't spot you at all, and they just lose their squads. There is literally no point in them even playing the game. CVs are done. There's no point in playing them at that point. It's over. It's over. It's over. There's no point in playing CVs at that point. It's done. You get your squad wiped when you're flying, and it's over. There's no point in playing CVs at that point. Right? It's over. Right? And at that point, it's like, why are the CVs even in the game at that point? So I do not think that DFA is going to be able to shoot them at high altitude. I don't think so. I highly, highly doubt it would. I'm not trying to be overly negative or overly positive. I'm trying to be neutral on this from both sides of the spectrum, right? I don't like CVs either, right? I hate CVs just as much as all of you. I hate CVs, I hate subs. One bad CV match can ruin my whole freaking day, and you guys know that watch me, right? One bad CV match or one bad submarine match, my mood is ruined for the whole day. I'm just pissed off for the whole day, dude. We all know this. We all know this. One bad match, it's done. My mood is ruined. So for me, it's like I'm trying to be where if they're going to overly nerf CV so bad to where even at high altitude they can't even see like the anti-rad that's hitting them with the DFA, it's literally done. CVs are gonna be, it's over for them, dude. It makes it where CVs are more useless than submarine players at that point, which is actually massive. This change, though, does make it where fighters are actually going to be useful because fighters can go after them at high altitudes. Because we have to think of it this way, right? If fighters can go after, if a CV can still launch fighters while at high altitude, and Askance even said that fighters can still spot, which means that they haven't changed the spotting for fighters yet, which is like my biggest gripe is fighter spotting. So you can be at high altitude and still drop your fighter, which then goes in spots, which is like the whole gripe. We're still in the same situation as before. It's just that CVs are now super fast because they're at high altitude. They're at their full speed all the time, which makes it worse. And if this change goes into effect, like the way it is now, which I highly doubt, they're going to do some changes. CVs are just going to fly to the back of the map of the enemy team, drop down, figure out where the battleships are at, and then go after the battleships. Most of the CV players aren't going to try. They're not going to be in the front no more. Unless they're playing something like an S6 where they can actually do team support, most of the damage farming CVs are no longer like the thing that kept CVs in the front was anti-air, right? Was anti-air. If they're at an altitude where they can just fly over everything magically and they don't have to worry about that, they can just fly to the back of the map, drop down, spot a little battleship, and then go and just bully them the whole time. And that's all they're going to do. They're going to find the lone battleship that is at the back of the map somewhere and just bully the living crap out of it. Or they'll go after the CV, one or the other, right? So what this is going to cause is it's going to cause people to either be more aggressive or it's going to make it where people just group up more. So you may see a lot more lemming trains. You may see more lemming trains because of this. So if you see a CV in a match, this may cause more lemming trains because people want to group up together to where a CV can't do that, right? I don't know if this will cause CVs and on CV violence more, but I could potentially see this. You forget those CVs hit like a feather duster. Most BBs have decent AA. What do you mean CVs hit like a feather duster, bro? What CVs are going after you, man? What are you talking about, bro? CVs can massively hit you. What are you talking about? What CVs are hitting you? Tier 6? Tier 4? Even tier 6 CVs. Depends on the CV and RNG. Like, it depends on the CV, exactly. Like, certain CVs are meant to do different things. Not only subs, DDs will be more likely. It was another server previous nerfing when we had battles when half the teams was triangles. More DDs, less BBs. Wargaming doesn't understand with a single thing about the several iterations. Yeah. Talk to my Malta and say it doesn't hit hard. Yeah, exactly, dude. Malta is a monster. Malta's a monster. FDR may make a comeback, surprisingly. Because if it can be at full, if it can be going full speed all the time, at least it's quicker. Right? Even our Courier Torps can still mess you up, exactly. Our Courier Torps can literally kill you. Like, they can kill you, man. If a Hakuryu hits you with the attack fighters and they set a fire and you DCP, you're almost guaranteed dead. Just saying. You're almost guaranteed dead, man. You're guaranteed dead from a Hakuryu. If you're a battleship and you get hit by a Hakuryu attack fighter, it hits you, starts a fire, you DCP, it comes back with its torpedoes, you're guaranteed to get a double flood from it. You're not going to shoot down any of its planes because of its heel. And then you're going to be dead at that point. Right? So, like, to me, the CVs still do damage. I don't see that like they're not. They do. But yeah. Let me do my stream raider and stuff real quick. They have to say.
I am excited. I was really excited to be able to talk about this. So
Yes.
and
I'm pretty excited to start trying it out as well. Remember, the test does start on Monday, and we want
Yes.
as many people to sign up for it as possible. Again, I've seen a lot of people mention that they think the mechanics might be a little bit complex or hard to figure out. Our hope is that it will actually feel pretty intuitive to play. So again, please give it a try on the public test server. It's not on.
It's way overly complicated for no freaking reason. It's way overly complicated for no reason, dude.
The actual PTS, it's on a separate server, but please register for the test and try it out. And let us know what you think, because we're at the stage now where we really want to get the player feedback and see how you guys actually handle the changes.
Yes, our designers are actively digging into this. We need your feedback.
Our feedback is we want mini map spotting, please. Mini map spotting. Please just give us mini map spotting. Please. Just give us mini map spotting.
Feedback is being wrapped into this. I've already seen some people talking about the CV test thinking that maybe we're really far along and everything's just kind of set in stone. That is not the case. We are pulling feedback. We need your information so that our designers can use it while we're iterating going forward. So please, please, please test this out and let us know what you think.
Again, Andy, that's the kind of stuff that we need the feedback on. Like, the whole point of having this dedicated special server where all these changes are on is so that you, the players, can have a go at them, try them out, give us your feedback so we can go back and go, okay, this worked, this didn't work. We can tweak that, we need to change that. That is the whole point of the purpose of doing this test.
Exactly. And no, it's not going to be on the regular public test server. It's going to be a separate test server. Otherwise, it would collide with our second round of public test server. And it's just simpler for us to have it as a separate build on a separate server to test it.
PTS is generally used to test the next upcoming update, make sure everything works properly. These changes are still a little bit further down the line. Again, like Askan said, it's pretty early into the design process. We want to start incorporating feedback. So we're opening up a separate build of the game, essentially. So remember to register via the portal article so that we can get you into the test. And let us know what you think.
Yes, it will be a separate instance.
That needs to be downloaded and installed.
Yes. So basically, by signing up, your account gets...
Most of these people that play this game have such old PCs, they can't even download a second version of WoW. So you really think they're going to be able to download a third version? And let's be real, most of the WoW's people aren't going to be able to figure out how to download a different instance. So you're going to need a tutorial video on how to tell them how to do that.
It's a little token which enables you to install this client. And I guess important to say is that obviously all the stuff that we've talked about today will be in a dedicated article on the 27th.
It should have already just came out today. I don't know why they didn't just talk about it today. I don't know why they talked about it today and then just did the dev blog not today. They should have done the dev blog today and the talk. If that means that if they did the dev blog on Saturday and they did the talk today, that means this talk was just out of the blue. They weren't going to talk about it, but then something happened where they wanted to talk about it. And they talked about specifically on Thursday because Thursdays are the highest wargaming numbers, so they're trying to get the news out about it as much as possible. It's probably because a lot of people didn't sign up for it, and they will need more people to play it. But I don't know.
So some Saturday reading for you. The test starts next week on the 29th, and there will be a special dedicated stream with some of the people more directly involved in the changes than ourselves on Monday evening.
Oh, so we actually get to hear actual devs. Not shit talking the community managers at all, but we get to talk to the actual devs of the game. The people that are in charge of the fun sheet. That is going to go really, really well. The people that is behind the way the game has been, we get to talk to them. All right.
Indeed.
Yep, we'll be back on the 29th ourselves to give you guys a stream where we can actually sit down and play the test and actually show you guys and give you some examples of the changes in mechanics.
Yes.
And just so you're aware, on Monday we will start around 7 p.m. Central European Summertime. So that is 17 UTC. So a bit later than usual, about an hour later.
I don't know.
Because our Legends colleagues stream before. And we will, of course, have a united stream together, not only this time with our colleagues from Austin, but also with someone from the Belgrade team, so our development studio, the development office basically, will join as well. And then you can shoot away, hopefully have tested it already at that time, or looking forward to seeing the changes live on stream in action.
Well, Cthulhu, obviously for the test server, it will be a special sort of setup, so it might include free resets. If elements of this go ahead and are successful, then obviously that update will require more significant changes and adjustments. Like, as we said, this is purely a test.
Exactly.
Yep, we're testing the mechanics right now. If there are major changes to captain skills, for example, then down the line there may be a captain skill rework. It all depends on where the development direction heads up.
Yes.
So the current, as Andy is asking, what time on Monday will the test server be available? It should be at around. Can you just
Thank you there, Al, for the 12 months. Yeah. Appreciate you, brother. Yeah. Thanks for the support, brother, for 1 year, man.
4 o'clock start
Appreciate
time.
you, dude.
Prague time. So 2 p.m. UTC. Bloody hell! I'm not using 24-hour clocks. makes my head hurt.
Most beautiful
do
emote
not worry,
ever.
Cthulhu. Like, part of what we were doing in prep for this stream was obviously all of us here, all 4 of us here are players. And so we were basically asked by the team, go like, okay, what are all the common questions people are going to ask? So the team knows going into this what the likely comments are going to be, what the likely questions are going to be, so they can start thinking on these answers and these plans as well.
I swear to God, if they don't put in there about fighter spotting, I'm gonna flip a switch, dude. That is like one of the most important questions that we have. How will fighter spotting be? That is the biggest thing.
So, like, this is something that has been planned for quite a while. We're now at the point of, like, we're going to test it. If the test is successful, then we move to the next step of the plan, and that's when things like that will come about.
And I just want to take a quick moment to remind everybody, the article that allows you to register for this test ends tomorrow. You
Yes.
need to click the button today or as early tomorrow as possible. So if you want to check it out, if you have any friends that want to check it out, share the article, get it out to people, let them know about this. Please, please, please. We need your help to get the feedback.
The fact that they're spending so much time trying to get people to do this just shows just how little people have actually signed up for it.
Also, you have a chance to win either 1 of 5 Musashis or 1 of 5 Enterprises while participating. So
And of course they have that. Okay, well there you go. There goes your increase.
everyone that might want to still make use of that, try a luck there.
Oh, there you go.
As we have seen earlier in chat, the questions Enterprise when.
Lucky
There is, for
Talk.
example, a chance.
I highly recommend that you hold your questions for Monday's stream. They will be better able to assist you than us.
Yes.
Yep, we'll be definitely doing a little bit more of a dedicated Q&A on Monday when we actually have the build in front of us to play and give you guys examples and more fully explain how everything works. Just kind of giving you a primer now on the article coming out on Saturday and then letting you guys know that we're doing the stream on Monday.
Yes, Captain Niagara, it will require a additional install.
Separate build.
Yes. Hang on.
Well,
We
I'd like
had
to say
notes for this.
Thank you very much for having us.
Okay. Well, I'm done with watching that. But yes. So let me just comment on this a bit and then we'll go and do whatever, right? The reason why a lot of people are probably not wanting to do this and they're talking about your feedback is important because for years the whole reputation of the wargaming devs is that they don't listen to feedback. So why all of a sudden are they asking for feedback? And I'm not talking about COTS and stuff like that where they actually listen a lot openly, right? So in tourneys, they listen really well. They've gotten really better with the COTS, tourneys, and how that goes. Tourneys, they normally listen to feedback really well. The problem is for the game itself, for years, the whole reputation of them is that they don't listen to feedback. That is the reputation that's been given off for years from CCs, from super testers, whoever. The reputation is they don't listen to feedback. So why all of a sudden are they wanting feedback, right? So most people aren't going to even want to play it because, like, well, they say they want feedback, but they don't listen anyway. I'm not saying they aren't going to listen. I'm just saying that they're trying to flip it whole around, right? The whole thing, right? For years, this is the reputation of it. And then they go and like, okay, now like now they're begging for feedback. Like they literally said begging. I'm not trying to say they're begging. It's literally they said begging. They're begging for feedback. The CV changes that we've been wanting or whatever has been we've been asking for years. CC's been asking it for. Everyone's been asking for it for years, right? We've been asking for this for years. We talked about the subs. We tried giving feedback on everything, and it's just like, no. It's like, it's just, that's the whole reputation. Right? So, I hope that they listen to the feedback from the people that play it. I hope they do. And I hope it makes the game more enjoyable. But, like, I hope they do. I really do. But, it's so late in it. Like, it's so late in the game for it that it's like, I don't know. But we'll see. But thank you guys for watching that with me. I appreciate it. Thank you.